Hi, this is Jerry, and I'd like to set the stage for what you're going to hear later on this tape for a variety of reasons. One thing, the room was packed wall to wall with people, and so Esther or Abraham couldn't make eye contact sitting in a normal chair, and so we had perched her on top of a book stand, and her feet, to brace her to keep her from tipping over forward, were braced on the high back of a chair that was sitting on the floor beneath her. And so that you'll understand a little bit of the positioning there. The other thing is the tape didn't, well, it recorded at a slow speed for some reason. It appeared to have been dragging the master. And so we weren't able to utilize, well, it could have, but it would sound a little like Donald Duck. And so we're not able to utilize that part of the tape. But let me just tell you some of the stories that they used in their opening that you might hear some reference or will hear some references to later. One is the story of Esther at the post office, that of course you can hear most of these stories as you listen back to, say, the Fort Collins tape, or in other words, the previous G tapes, or they'll use these stories again and again because they make so many points with them, covering so many different areas for so many different reasons. Plus, I've noticed that Abraham uses a tremendous amount of repetition because it apparently takes it. I know it takes it for me. I have to hear a thing often many ways and many times before I begin to really assimilate it into my current thinking and action experience. And so anyway, so one of the stories is the Esther's at the post office here in Bernie, and the line, which is really unusual to have a line, was not moving. But she wasn't aware of that at first because she was kind of watching some little children playing, and Esther just loves little children. I mean, when I see Esther with a big smile on her face looking off somewhere, I usually know I'm going to see a child at the other end of that. She wasn't aware of how slow it was moving until she started noticing some other people in the line, some of the adults who were looking at their watches, wiping their brows, and so on and so forth. And when she became aware of that, then a man standing right next to her started actually speaking out loud of how slow the line was going, which was very embarrassing to Esther because she would never, well, I don't say never, but she typically wouldn't have said anything to try to get the line to speed up in the post office. But the point was of how her thoughts evoked his words, which brought that about. And it had to do with her attention. And then they also used a story of some young boys were breaking some bottles on the road that goes down past our house. It's quite a ways from our house, but Esther was able to hear it first and then see it. And how, when she yelled at them, how she disengaged, in essence, from contact with her inner being, and how she felt so weak and so deflated. But then she raced down the street to them because she wanted to tell them that she didn't feel right about yelling, and they said they didn't feel right about breaking the bottles either, and so it all turned into a very pleasant experience. They also told the story of when we came home from one of our trips, the man who owns a considerable amount of acreage in this area has more or less a frontage area that comes up between our property and the adjoining property of about 60 or 80 feet across there. And it was filled with cedar and oak trees and so on and so forth. And we came home, he was about to, we saw the tree cutters who were going to give him an estimate on it, that were going to cut all the trees out of there except a few of the big oaks. And Esther was very upset about that. And so when she was upset, Abraham just clarifies what her upset state of mind. And then when she started looking at the positive aspects of the man and his considerations and considered what she wanted and how beautiful the trees were, then as it turned out, the man came over to our home and said that he would walk his property with me and for me to tell him which trees we'd like left. And I did. I pointed out and we marked the trees right along our fence line that still gives us this buffer of green, and he left those trees which pleased all of us. And so it had to do with all of these things of how our thoughts evoke and how we create and how we attract. Plus, a very major point Abraham makes is the synchronicity of how Esther and I, because we're very seldom home at this particular period, we've been traveling a great deal, how Esther and I we didn't happen to be, but how we were at the point in time, those men were just there for a few minutes, just taking a look at that, and we'd traveled into the post office and so on and so forth. But Abraham explained how we stopped here and stopped there, so the timing was right for us, something that was as important to Esther as it was to have those green trees along the edge of the property, that how the timing was right, that we would be there just as they were there, and so on. So you may hear some references to the trees or to the post office, to the boys breaking the bottles and so on, but I just wanted to clarify that.
Now what is it you're wanting to talk about?
Hello, Abraham. Since we started talking about negative thoughts, positive thoughts, one of the things, I guess I grew up with a lot of negatives along the way, and it seems like my focus is more to the negative than to the positives. And it's like a yearning or a desire to work in that area. When I get a thought, it's like I nourish it, I focus on it, I believe it's true, I'm constantly energized by the negative thought, where I think I live more in the negative side sometimes than the positive sides. And I would like to make whatever breakthrough I need to get out of that, because I know it's creating negativity.
Would you say that it feels easier to go with the negative than the positive?
Yes.
Let's see if we can put this into perspective for you that will help you. You are describing the momentum, perhaps, of this physical lifetime. Usually not of the whole lifetime, but from the most recent segment that you can remember. And what we are wanting you to hear from us is that you have a much more powerful, much broader, much longer momentum. Now we are speaking from the perspective of your inner being and all that you have lived, that if you will acknowledge that it exists in that place of pure positive energy, then you can use that as a sort, we use the word piggyback, you can use that as a sort of bridge or launch into more often feeling positive through your physical format. In other words, it's easy for you, and we hear it from many of you. These are the patterns of my thought. And we say, we know that. But when you are thinking in those patterns, and you are disconnected from your inner being, and now you've acknowledged you are disconnected from your inner being, if you will make that connectedness be the top priority, then we believe that it will be rather easy for you. We're going to talk about this for a little bit here, because many of you are resonating here, and we're wanting to give you some tools that will assist you. Our friend Jerry came into the back door of the house and did something that he does not do. In fact, he was trained not to do it as a child. He left his hat on, big brimmed hat. Esther was waiting for him on the front porch, and he stopped by the bathroom with his hat on, and then joined Esther on the porch. And when he came out, he had a big smile on his face, for a scorpion had fallen from the ceiling vent, had bounced off his hat and onto the floor. And from the position of the heater vent and from the position of the scorpion and where he was standing, he acknowledged, good thing I had my hat on, or it would have gone down my collar. His inner being did not say to him, watch out, there is danger. The heavy scorpion music did not play in the background. Instead, because he is in harmony with his inner being offered him an impulse, a strong enough impulse that it set aside all of that training, an impulse, wear your hat. And so he followed that guidance. Now, here we believe will be the factor that will help you the most in making the very comfortable transition to be more often on the positive side of the equation than the negative. Your inner being never says, don't do that. Your inner being is wise enough to know that attention to a subject is adding power unto it, you see. And so your inner being is not running around trying to fix problems. Your inner being is always looking toward solution. When you are getting impulse or guidance from your inner being, it is always come here, look there, this is a good idea, what do you think about this? In other words, the guidance that comes forth from your inner being is always positive. And those other records that you are hearing that say, watch out for that, worry about this, don't go over there, you've picked those up somewhere along from this physical format. They are physical orientation, and they are not serving you well, or anyone else, even though it is the norm. And so we are doing a sales job here. Can you hear it? Mm-hmm. We're wanting you to feel reason to let nothing be more important than your own vibration. And we believe that as you have reason to let your vibration be first order of day, that you will simply catch yourself more often. Now, if you are driving down the highway and your goal is to stay within the white lanes of traffic, and you are not watching what you're doing, you've dropped your Abraham cassette on the floor and you're reaching around trying to find it, and so trying to figure out which one it is and which side you're on. And as you are not watching what you're doing, you veer off into the shoulder of the road, let us say. Not a big deal. All you have to do is bring yourself back into your lane of traffic. But what if you had driven off on this little country road earlier, and there had been rain and you had made a very deep rut? And now, when you get off onto the shoulder of the road, now your tire is caught in that rut that was there before. Now it takes more to bring yourself back easily. And so on some topics, you have dug some deep ruts. You've been pulling on some negative ropes. And so some issues, it doesn't take very, all Esther had to hear was the word cut trees. And she went into a negative tailspin. She's been pulling on that negative rope for a very long time, even in the area where they're living. Every time she sees them clearing land, she's worried about where the rabbits will live and what the road runners will do, you see. And so, as you are making some new ruts, we promise some processes as we are moving forward, and they will be forthcoming. Let us offer you the game of yeses here. What are you wanting from us?
I would like, if you would, to include in that, address what he brought up a moment ago, that he's energized by the negative, as opposed to enervated by the negative.
Truly. Energized. Can you describe energized? Other than in terms of momentum?
It's normal for me. It's a feeling. It's a good feeling. It's like I'm being directed like a magnet. Like you talk about a magnet being attracted. It seems more normal for me. Just it's hard to explain.
Here is the reason for that. You are much more non-physical than you are physical. This physical perspective, it is a very short part of all that you are. And from your broader non-physical perspective, you are soaring with eagles, while as physical beings, sometimes you feel as if you have your feet stuck in the mud. Now, from your broadest perspective, you know the power of thought and the power of energy. And so, negative energy feels better to you than no energy. In other words, you are feeling the power of it. Mm-hmm. And that is what you are attracted to. It is the recognition, this is really getting something done, and it is. It is just not in harmony with anything you want, you see. Mm-hmm. And so we believe that that is what you are experiencing, is the sensation of masses of thinkers behind you in this, even if it is your own thought. Is this making sense to you? When we talk with our physical friends about the blending process, or about the deliberate realignment of physical energy in order to open a passageway between physical and non-physical, some of you have heard us speak about that, have you not? What do we teach you to do? We teach you to think of nothing. Do you know why? It is easier to bring you to a place of thinking of nothing than it is to get you to think of something that feels good. Because your physical orientation, as you have described, is so focused to, you have been trained by a world, a physically oriented world, that really believes something that defies law. You really believe that in order to have